Yeah. Please tell me that I can't, that I won't, that I fail, that I'll never make it out, yeah. Please tell me all the bad, never good, fill my head full of every single doubt, yeah.
I don't do webcams that much, right? I used to cover a couple of them, but realistically, over the last couple of years, there's not been much in the way of innovation in the market of webcams. Most people tend to gravitate towards whatever the best one is, right? There's a load of webcams on the market. Each have got their own pros and cons, but at the end of the day, mate, they all kind of look exactly the same unless you're min-maxing on finite details and picture quality, which most people in the business sense don't really care about. So then Nexigo got in touch and they're like, do you want to try our Iris webcam? I was like, not really. Come on, man. What? Another 4K webcam. What do you got? I looked at their product page and that's when things changed, because this thing is specifically aimed at business customers, boardroom meetings, conference meetings, when you need to hold a large group of people in a room and film them for whatever reason you might have. I ain't gonna judge. But the box came, this is it here, it's the largest sensor on a webcam, and I'm not too shy about admitting that. So it's a Sony Starvis sensor inside a webcam. It films it, records at 4K 30, 4K 25, 1440 and 1080 60. 1080 30, a whole bunch of other resolutions all in between, but 4K 30 is obviously the flagship resolution that most people are going to want to go at. It sends a video out of the camera over HDMI uncompressed, or it can go out over USB 3. So this can go straight into a TV over the HDMI, which is really useful when you've got a boardroom. So yeah, the unboxing experience is pretty slick. It's very Apple-esque, right, with flappy flap. Not too, oh. Right, the reason there's no camera in there, mate, might have spotted this already. But I'm using the camera right now. That's what's filming me on the green screen, and I'm also using the mic built into the camera, which ain't going to be brilliant, but that's partly due to the room that I'm in, which is, I guess, going to be reflective of a lot of work situations and office scenarios, because this room I'm in, this room I'm in, it's kind of like built like a church hall. And offices tend to be, well, they're not built like church halls, but they're not exactly acoustically dampened. The mic in this camera is exceptionally sensitive. In fact, there's a council grass cutter outside my house. He's quite a distance away, and I know that this camera's picking up the vibrations and the hums from that council lawnmower. So the features that this has that kind of piqued my interest, the main one was the fact that it goes out over HDMI, but it also comes with a remote control, which is super useful if you're sat in a meeting with a group of people and you want to make quick adjustments. You don't want to be hopping onto the mouse and keyboard, opening up webcam software and messing about with all that. You can make a majority, if not all, adjustments you need to off the remote control, like change source. You can even pan around, you can zoom in and zoom out, which you'll see that, yes, I'm, there I am, I'm cropped right in. That's me, stood in front of my green screen, mate. Quite a nice, slick zoom that it's got there. It's got a whole bunch of AI features built into it, like auto framing, auto tracking. It's got noise reduction. It's got picture-in-picture. And it's all adjustable through that remote control, through the menu built into it, which appears on the TV. Yeah, let's take a look a bit more in depth. That was WhatsApp going off in the background and my phone buzzing. There you are. Right, let's jump out of the green screen and take a look at this camera in a bit more detail, in a more natural environment. Mate, you join me as it would appear my world has just descended into darkness, but it's not quite the case. I am actually in a very bright room, but I've set the cameras up in such a way that's representative of how people tend to have business meetings on Skype and Zoom and all that kind of stuff, and on Teams. There's a bright window in the background and you're in just a normally lit room. It's 3:15 in the afternoon in the UK, in sort of just the end of summer. It's very bright in here, but the camera's not able to cope. It's overexposing the window, and it's not doing a good job of compensating for me, who's the subject, and that should be its priority, and it's just not doing a great job of that. I'm using the mic again on the Nexigo Iris. It's about an arm's, how much better do I look right now? Wow, that is so much better. But as soon as I move my hand away, yeah, it's not doing a great job. So I'll go into the settings in a bit on the Nexigo, but let's take a look at two of its competitors in the same scenario. First, the AverMedia PW513 4K camera at around the $200, £200 price point. So this is the PW513. It's doing a better job, but still not great. So if I was to blank out that window with my hand, white balance is very different to the Nexigo. It's a lot cooler on this one.
but equally not doing a great job of compensating for me, the subject. But I think it's overall brighter than the Nexigo. There's a lot more detail and clarity in the window behind, which I'm not interested in. I'm only interested in the subject, but you can see me a lot clearer than you could do with the Nexigo camera. Let's hop on over to the Elgato Facecam. This camera doesn't have a mic, so I'm using my studio mic here. This is the only one that's 1080 as well, so it's not going to be as sharp as the other two, but it's clearly doing a better job of compensating for the window and making sure that I'm in picture and in view. So let's get rid of that. That's not terrible, actually. That's really good. That's not too bad at all. So that's the Facecam. Each of the cameras has its own granular settings over here where you can adjust ISO and exposure compensation, all that kind of stuff. But these cameras are currently stock out of the box default settings. If you've got no idea what any of this stuff is and you don't have the time or the inclination to get acquainted with them, this is what they're going to be like out of the box. So I've shut the window and this is the Nexigo Iris. This is pretty good, actually. The room that I'm in, it's not bright light. I'm not directly lit by natural light and right in front of me. I'm sort of at the back of the room. The window's maybe 7 meters that way. But this is pretty clear. This is not too bad, actually. That's the Nexigo Iris. Let's hop on over to the 513. And this is the P2 513, mate. The color temperature on this one seems to have gone warmer than it was before, but this is pretty good. There's quite a lot of noise in here, but I feel like this is good quality, actually. I'm impressed with this one as well. Let's hop on over to the Facecam from Elgato. I think this one's gone warmer again. I feel oversaturated, a little bit fuzzy, but not terrible. Pretty good for 1080p cam, but it's not priced as a 1080p cam. It's quite expensive, the Facecam. Out of the three of them, it's hard to tell which one is the best in this sort of environment, but I'd say possibly the Nexigo. Let's pop back over. Absolutely. No doubt about it. This one out of the three is the best. When it comes to a typical natural room sort of setting. Mate, let's take a closer look at the Iris. We'll look at some of its features, functionality, pros and cons. I mean, let's be honest, all you really care about is any good. What's it like compared to the others? And should you buy it? But let's start with some of the cons. Right, the first con is a reason why you might want to think again about buying this is it's on a fixed amount. It's got something to do with the fact that I'm sat here and the camera's not pointing at me. I can't point it at me. It's fixed on top of the monitor. It can tilt up and down, but it can't swivel left or right. Possibly an intentional design choice so that when it's mounted on ceilings, it doesn't budge left or right and fall out of frame. But it's an issue if you're intending on using this on top of a monitor. So just bear that in mind. It's got a 1/4 inch thread as well for mounting the tripods and for mounting to the ceiling, but just on top of the monitor. It's fixed forwards. Second con, I've told Nexigo this, they've penny pinched big time on what's included in the box. When you bought a product at this price point, you kind of expect that when it arrives, you're able to use it right off the bat, especially if you've bought it in a hurry and you need to use it urgently. You'll have to think again, because they don't include an HDMI cable in the box when one of its main features is HDMI out to a TV. It works over USB to a PC. That's great if that's what you're going to use it for, but out to a TV in a boardroom, for example, you have to go find an HDMI cable. And if your offices are anything like where I've worked, they don't last long, or they get locked in IT cupboards when IT tend to not be around. So you have to pop down to the shop, buy yourself an HDMI cable before you can use it. And whilst you're there, you might want to pop down to the battery aisle, mate, because they've also penny pinched on the batteries for the remote. It comes batteryless. So it takes 2 AAA batteries. You have to go and get some of them before you're able to use the remote. So it's a shame that you can't use this right out of the box. As soon as you've opened it, you will have to find a cable for a TV and 2 batteries if you are going to HDMI out. But once you're past that, mate, this camera is absolutely extraordinary. Just look at the picture. It's incredible. And it's got a whole bunch of controls that are accessible via this, which is by far the biggest pro of this device and a very compelling reason to buy it. So if you are going to use this in an office for your CEO meetings, for sales meetings, and you don't want to have to keep going back to a PC to adjust the camera or to change settings or do whatever, it can all be done by this remote, which it's a pretty damn good remote as well. It's not even line of sight. You can point this in a complete opposite direction of the camera and it'll still work. So built into this, it's got its own on-screen menu, which you can see up here.
and it's got, so we'll go through some of the settings in here because some of them might pique your interest. So the first one is meeting mode. These are sort of presets for how the camera works. Meeting mode is what most people are going to have it in. And there's also streamer mode, which I have absolutely no idea what this thinks it's doing. This is not ideal. If I key light myself, no. And then it's got low light mode. So this is for environments where it's pretty dark or dim. It enables a low light setting, but you can see I'm getting quite juddery because this isn't necessarily low light. So I'm getting quite juddery and shaky. So I'll be using it in meeting mode, which is actually really very fluid. So at the moment I'm stood about 5 meters away from the Iris. You can tell the audio's not the best, but this room it's not great. And don't I know it? But as I'm walking, you're going to hear echoes and creaks reverberating through the camera. Whether you'll get that when it's mounted on a ceiling, don't know. But at the moment it's on a tripod on the floor, so it's picking up a lot of vibrations. Almost everything that happens is going to go right through that camera. So those are your 3 presets. If you are just going to stick to a preset and then adjust the settings on that, you've got a whole bunch of what they call AI, but you've got auto framing and auto tracking. So auto framing and tracking are very similar. In fact, I'm not even sure what the difference is between the two of them, but with auto framing on, this is where you could be sat here and it should center me in frame, but you lose the wider field of view if you do that. And if you get up and walk around, it should follow you in real time as you're walking around. So that's great for meetings, again, where you need to maybe go to a whiteboard, back to your laptop, walk to the audience, whatever. But as long as you're in field of view of the camera, it's going to follow you and then zoom in. So that's auto framing. Not gonna lie, I don't actually know the difference between that and auto tracking. It appears to do exactly the same thing. Maybe a little bit further zoomed out, but it's still following me in real time. Very similar to framing. Whatever, right? You know, it is what it is. There you go. So that's auto framing and auto tracking. So it's got picture-in-picture mode. So this is useful for if you want to do a presentation, you've got one source here and you've got the camera down at the bottom. It can do this sort of picture-in-picture mode. I haven't figured out how it works yet. I haven't figured out how to get another source here. This may be sort of maybe HDMI 1 on the TV, HDMI 2 on the TV for the camera. Don't know, but it's got that picture-in-picture. And then facial enhancement is absolutely dreadful. That hasn't enhanced my face at all, so I'll be leaving that off. Right, then we've got exposure settings. So this is set to auto at the moment. It was set to auto when I was doing the test with the window in the background, but you do have the ability to change it to shutter priority, where you can increase or open and close the shutter, which can yield better results. You can adjust that, and as well as the ISO. It depends on your lighting, but and again, I've relayed this to Nexigo. I would prefer if the camera was able to adjust itself to compensate for the environment rather than me have to go into here, depending on the time of day, because the lighting is going to be different in an office or a room based on what time of day it is. Don't have the time to be messing about with these kind of settings every time you want to use a camera. You just want the camera to do it itself. So you've got color options, you've got white balance mode, manual calibration mode. Please point the camera at the plain white wall before calibrating. No, I'm not going to be doing that. You've got the custom color temperature, where you can go from cooler through to warmer, or just auto. Let's be honest, most people are just going to keep this in auto mode. Image settings, brightness, contrast, sharpness, and then you've got your flips. Really useful if, for example, your meeting software's got you flipped and you don't want to be flipped. You can flip the background, or maybe you just think you look better from that side and you want to flip it. So it's a psychological thing. Vertical flip for when it's mounted to a ceiling. It's going to be upside down on a ceiling. You can flip it, and you can also flip the on-screen display as well. This menu. Wow, this is really confusing. This menu there. So that's flipped as well. Black and white mode or color? Sure. Why not? Why? Don't know. Gamma. You can adjust the gamma, but again, I don't have a use case scenario where you'd want to do this, but it's there. Sure. HDR mode, high dynamic range. No, no, let's leave that off. And then low light mode. This is again for darker environments. Instead of going to the low light mode preset, you can enable meeting mode and then enable low light mode, but then we've still got the same sort of juddery thing going on here where you had on the preset. Noise reduction. So with noise reduction off, I don't know what the difference between 2D and 3D is. What's that? But you can see we're getting a bit of grain in the back, but this isn't actually bad. That's not, in the bricks, a bit of noise happening in the main sides of the bricks, but mate, that's pretty impressive. With the key light on, yeah, it's not exposing me properly. 2 and 2 I found is a pretty good setting for minimal fuzziness and blurriness on the subject, but also removing pretty much all of the noise. So that's a good setting to have that on. HDMI video formats. This is where you go in and specify the resolution of the camera. It's on 4K 30 right now, but you've got your 4K 25, 1440p, various 1080s, including 60 frames per second, and then down at 720 if you want to reduce the output through an internet line, for example. Information. You got your firmware, your resolution, the date, the current settings. There you go. And then if you've found that you've made a complete pig's ear of it, you can restore all the settings back to default by hitting that there. It would be nice if you can refer to default one particular submenu, like just these ones here, but unfortunately it has to reset the entire scene. So those are the settings. Pretty decent, very granular. The remote itself has got a whole bunch of buttons on there. You can turn the camera off using the remote change source. So this will switch between USB mode and HDMI mode. Remake, there you go. There's the Nexigo Iris. It's out this week. Just a couple of points to pin onto the end that I didn't mention during this that may be of interest, maybe not. But the Iris comes with its own software from Nexigo, which is very weak. You get very little control in here. It's nowhere near. It doesn't like a candle to the likes of Elgato software or even AverMedia's. But you can change brightness, contrast, everything you can do already in the on-screen menu, but you can do it through this app in advanced. Not very advanced, I don't know why. There's less settings in that than there is in that, never mind. And then a support tab for a couple of, it's a basic Windows form, Visual Basic form, with not much else. There's a preview here where you can look at.
Well, I have no idea what happened there. The camera is either broken or something's gone wrong. The last thing you saw me do was turn on the preview in the Nexigo software. That then knocked the entire camera off, and I can't now get an HDMI signal out of the camera. So you're watching this over the USB connection, which should just be as good quality. It's not uncompressed out, but it should just be as good. But that 10 minutes that I spent there, I would not want to spend that 10 minutes in a boardroom before a meeting or during a meeting, messing about with the camera of all things before a meeting starts or during a meeting. So yeah, that's something for Nexigo to possibly look at. But anyway, there you go, mate. That's the Iris. It's some teething issues, no doubt, but overall, on its day, this is an absolutely outstanding camera. What I will say, though, just as a word of caution, is don't read too much into the marketing around this camera. There's some... They've made the sin, it's not a mistake, the cardinal sin of putting pictures and samples on the website for this camera that are clearly not from this camera. Like this one here, where you can see some office workers in front of a bright window, and I've clearly demonstrated that that's not the case. So those are not from this camera, which is, that's very deceptive. It's not cool. That should not happen. And also, they've marketed this as being applicable and suitable for gamers. It's not. You wouldn't get this if you're a gamer. This is for boardrooms, and because of the remote and the flexibility that gives you, again, when it's working, it's a good choice. I think it's definitely something you should at least take a punt on if you need something to be mounted on a ceiling or a tripod to cover a wide room of people. They haven't said what the field of view is yet. I'm sure I could measure it, but it's not quite as wide as the AverMedia, but it's still a pretty good field of view. Some more of the stats. Its digital zoom is 10x, which is about 9.3 feet, 3 meters. It takes USB 3. The voice pickup, they rate it being up to 20 feet for the microphone, which is very impressive. But as I found out during this making of this video, the microphone is very sensitive. And I think that's good, mate. I think that's good. Right, we're knocking on the head there. That's the Nexigo Iris. Is probably about as much as you need to see for this to make your mind up. Either way, my name's Neil Cross. This has been Tech 3D. If you're interested in taking a punt on this camera, I'll put some links in the description. if you want to check out current pricing in your region. Not sure what regions it's been launched in yet, but it's launching on the 14th of September. Okie dokie, thanks very much, and I'll see you in the next one. Toodles!